I went from a 50,000 square foot governor's mansion to a 6 foot by 8 foot prison cell. No governor has been in a prison like that. Only me, because I fought back against their corrupt allegations, because there was all weaponization before Trump. They did to me what they then did to Trump. And I think they learned on how to do it. And then some of the same people did it. To answer your question on a personal level, look, President Trump has been only good to me. My relationship with him is really amazing. It's miraculous. It's been a one-way street. He's always doing stuff for me. We did ask for the clemency, and he tried to, as soon as he could, to try to do it. He finally was able to do it, which was remarkable because it does nothing for him politically. It cost him probably politically. And then he gets elected, and 5 days into office, without me asking, because I felt, Sean, he did so much for me. Most importantly, he gave my little girls their father back. And when you think about it that way, when a guy does that for your kids who've grown up, my little one was 8 years old when I left. My older one was 15. And by the time I got home, they were grown up. And Trump gave them their father back. That's the greatest gift anybody's ever given me.
All right, guys, I hope you had a great weekend. I think President Trump takes the cake, though. He had quite the weekend. He started Friday night by having this, he's calling it the Rose Garden Club, refinished Rose Garden, a practical Rose Garden. And trust me when I tell you, the Rose Garden was pretty, but it was not practical. Like, your feet would sink in it. If you were out there, women who were in heels, it was a disaster. And it wasn't really usable for all those great events. You'd have to put wood down where the president would sit if he was with a guest, and the rest of the people would sink in their chairs. And anyway, so very practically, this big kickoff Sunday night. I saw all the pictures. No, I did not get invited. I'm going to try to get over there at some point, but it was like you could see Speaker Johnson, Derek Van Orden, John McGuire, the congressman from Virginia here, Dave McCormick from Pennsylvania, and a bunch of the senior staff was there. The September to Remember continues, guys. I've been talking to a lot of my friends in the White House, the administration, in the last couple of days about trying to come on. So just trust me when I tell you, hit that subscribe and notification button, because we got a lot of great stuff coming your way. Rod Blagojevich is here. He's a former governor. He was pardoned by Trump, as you can recall. Trump talked a lot about Chicago on his way to the U.S. Open. And we're going to play that for you in just a little bit. But what are the options that he has? What should the governor and mayor be doing in Chicago? So much to get to. As I mentioned, Friday night, the White House announced with Secretary of Defense that they were changing the Secretary of Defense, the Department of Defense, to the Department and Secretary of War. This is what it used to be called, by the way. Now, for all these people who are suddenly like, oh, this name change is going to be crazy. When I first got in the military, we had what we call SINC. So it was Commander-in-Chief Pacific or whatever, Commander in Pacific Europe. And we changed all this to COM. So it used to be SINCPAC. Now it's COMPAC. Totally had to do the same thing. Change all the stationery and everything. No one cared at the time. But now that Trump's doing something, oh my gosh, it's crazy. By the way, when he was at this Rose Garden thing, he teed off on the media. And it was funny. I had a conversation. I'll just tell you who it was. I saw Seb Gorka at a dinner the other night. We were talking about how quick everyone moves in Trump time and how when Trump slowed down, I said, the funny thing, Seb, is that when Trump slows down, what happens? For like 2 seconds, they go, oh, he must be dead. Trump addressed the fake news media reports at the Rose Garden Club at the beginning of it. Take a look.
We'll say goodbye to the press, but it's an honor to have you. And actually, the press has been very good lately, except for one rumor that they spread. I did about 8 press conferences in a row, day after day after day. Then I missed one because I was in the Oval Office. And I also went out to a club because I had meetings at a club. And they saw that I was and the rumor started spreading, this horrible rumor that Trump is no longer with us. They said, and I said, I got to the club, sir, are you okay? Are you okay? The fake news was at it again. But because I missed one day of press conferences, so today I gave them about a 3-hour press conference.
It is amazing. The guy slows down for 1 second, and they go, he must be dead. It just tells you how fast. And not to mention this, but on that Friday, when he did the change from Secretary of Defense and Department of Defense to Secretary in Department of War, that was his 200th executive order, more than anyone in modern history. He is really on a roll. By the way, I will mention, he wasn't the only one busy. The Pope canonized 2 new saints this weekend. I got to just say, this Carlo Acutis kid, it's an amazing story. I'll try to talk about it later in the week. He deeply loved his faith, the Eucharist. He passed away on October 12th at the age of 15. He was beatified in 2020. It was unbelievable. The event in St. Peter's Square, hundreds of thousands of people there to see it. It was absolutely amazing what this young man has done, and showing how, as much as the technology can be a problem sometimes, it actually can be used for good, to spread the word of faith and Jesus. And I'm so glad that the Pope recognized him this weekend. As I mentioned, Rod Blagojevich, the former governor who was pardoned by Trump, joining us in just a minute. Tomorrow, Jack Ciattarelli, who is the Republican nominee in New Jersey, a state that I think a lot of people feel that we're on the heels of picking up, and Jim McLaughlin will be here to break down where we are, both in New Jersey and all week long. By the way, I spoke of Chicago and crime. We had a big rant this weekend, as we do every weekend. It's so funny. It was because we're going to talk about crime, and we talked about it over the weekend. By the way, we're going to have an amazing, I have something so teed up for this weekend. You are going to want to hit that subscribe and notification button. I'm doing something this weekend for our rant that I've been planning this for like 2 months. I'm excited for it. That's all I'll say right now. Before we get to Governor Blagojevich, though, I got to tell you, over the weekend, you guys know I spent a lot of time on the grill. I spent a lot of time cooking eggs, omelets, etc. And you know what I start to put on everything now is Firecracker Farm hot salt. This is the grinder. It looks like this. One little click. I'm not going to do it because it'll come out. Is 3 types of salts: Scorpion, Reaper, and Ghost. It sounds a lot more hot than it is. It's unbelievable. It's just packed with flavor. So sometimes you put spices on your food, steak, seasoning, chicken, whatever it is, vegetables. This stuff is a whole new level. Like, it adds a kick and just a powerful burst of flavor that I've never tasted in my entire life before. And I don't think, because it's a small American company that makes this stuff in batches, you can't just go out and get it. It sells out all the time. Megyn Kelly talked about it all the time. Joe Rogan has talked about it, and it sells out. It is back in stock right now. So if you're trying to get it before Father's Day, it got sold out. But I'm telling you, I add it to so many things right now. If you go to firecracker.farm, not .org, not .edu, firecracker.farm, and use code SPICER for a discount for all of our watchers and listeners. Trust me, you're going to want to put it on everything when you do it. It's so easy to use. One little hit of that grinder takes care of everything. Go to firecracker.farm and use code SPICER. All right. Well, you know what, though? After a great night of eating, you know what you're going to want to do? Sleep. And you know what I do every night? If you've been watching this show, the number one question I get asked all the time is, do you really use your Beam Dream powder? Do you think I emptied all these bags by just sitting around doing nothing? It's not for show. These are empty. I've got like 6 of them right here because I use my Beam Dream powder every single night. And I've literally gotten out of bed, if I forget it, and gone and taken a scoop, put it in the water, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. Like I've said before, some people don't use the microwave. When I'm traveling, I just stir it and drink it straight. Some people have told me they like it with milk, but trust me when I tell you that this has totally changed how I sleep every night. I fall asleep, I stay asleep, and I feel rip roaring ready to go when I wake up. So if you go to shopbeam.com/Spicer and use code word Spicer, you can get up to 40% off. This is all natural, guys. There is no like fake stuff here. Magnesium, melatonin, reishi, L-theanine, and apigenin. But it is all natural. The flavor is unbelievable. You can get it in cocoa, cinnamon, brownie, peppermint. There's a bunch. None of I love them all. I do love this cocoa cinnamon. That's my favorite. But the last couple nights I've been doing the brownie because I got a ton of it and I want to just keep going. But I'm telling you, go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for over 40% off. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the former governor of Illinois, who was pardoned by Donald Trump, to break down what's going on in Chicago and what options they should make there with respect to the offer of help that President Trump has given them. Rod Blagojevich. Governor, good to see you again. Thanks for coming back.
Always a pleasure, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Good. All right. So your hometown here is in the news quite a bit. I wish you the best of luck tonight. The Bears get the big Monday night. There's a lot of attention that's going to be paid to Chicago here. Yesterday, the president went to the U.S. Open, and on his way there, he talked to the press a little bit about Chicago. I want to play you what he had to say.
Why? Let me ask you. Yeah. Really higher than Chicago? You're not... Excuse me. Do you know how many people were killed in Chicago last weekend? 8. You know how many people were killed in Chicago the week before? 7. You know how many people were wounded? 74 people were wounded. You think there's worse than that? I don't think so.
All right, so Governor, here's my question. You've been in elected office, especially, I mean, from Chicago, your family, I mean, this is your bread and butter. How does any elected official in Chicago say that they're keeping the people of Chicago safe, knowing those statistics?
Well, if they say it, they're lying, and they're knowingly lying, and that's what our current Governor Pritzker's doing. It's what our current Mayor Johnson's doing. They're lying. And what's really unfortunate is the fact that this isn't some small lie. It's not a little white lie. This is a big lie. This is about life and death. People are being murdered every single day in Chicago. We average more than a murder a day in Chicago. And Sean, President Trump just gave you some numbers, but this immediate weekend, just yesterday on Sunday, the numbers came in from Friday and Saturday. Another 5 people were murdered and 10 more were shot. And up until Saturday, a couple of days ago, there were 247,899 reported crimes in Chicago. That means we almost average close to 600 reported crimes a day. And for 13 straight years, Chicago has led the nation in the number of murders that we've had in our city. And so the fact that our mayor and our governor refused the help that's being offered by the president of the United States, it's immoral for sure. It seems to me it ought to be criminal, because it's like looking the other way when you have a chance to save lives. And in 80% of the murder cases, those are Black lives. So Black lives matter to Democrats only when it comes to votes. But they won't work with Donald Trump and the president of the United States to be able to actually save those lives by taking the offer of help that President Trump has suggested. And worse than that, Sean, they're fighting him. It isn't just that they're saying, no, we don't want your help. They're going to, Pritzker has threatened to go to court and block this. It's remarkable.
So, I mean, that's why I'm saying, like, remarkable in the sense that like, take any city, but you know Chicago through and through. If this was Barack Obama as president, and he was calling saying, hey, we got a problem here with Chicago and the crime, do you think they would, it's just Trump, or are they that ignorant that they would still say no? And by the way, that was a really bad Barack Obama, I admit it.
Well, not so great, but your point is also a little bit upside down. Obama would never do it. To answer your question, if it was Obama calling, they'd say, of course, we'd love to help. But Obama would never do what Trump is doing. You see, what President Trump is doing is really substantial, because he's the president of the United States. He doesn't need to get involved in these things technically. But he said the other day something that really moved me, because I did it myself when I was governor back in 2008, and I had suggested the National Guard to help Mayor Daley fight an epidemic in the same neighborhoods, the Black neighborhoods, the low-income neighborhoods, the neighborhoods where people are denied a good quality of life, largely because of the Democratic policies that don't want them to get up and out of those conditions and make life better for them. But President Trump said he has an obligation to do something, because the citizens of Chicago are his constituents too. So he has an obligation, he believes, a moral one, to save lives. The unfortunate fact is Obama would never do it. He would never want to get in the middle of something that could come back to bite him politically. But if Obama did make the call, these same Democrats, Pritzker, Johnson, and all the other Democrats would, of course, said yes. But they're playing partisan politics. I'm sorry, Sean.
No, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, Governor, I'm like, okay, so Chicago is blue, Illinois is blue. You have a Republican president reaching out and saying, I want to take care of a blue state in a blue city that I'll never get any kind of credit for.
Right.
But also, he's not up for re-election. I mean,
Right.
I'm thinking as you're talking about this, that
Right.
the irony of this is normally like a second-term president would be trying to take care of their base, trying to help everyone out. He's not spending time shoring up like Oklahoma and Montana and saying, I want to make sure that those governors get the resources they need or help them in the midterms. Any benefit that he would potentially politically yield won't help him in the midterms. No one in like red states are going, yay, Chicago's safe.
Right. What you're saying is absolutely right. It speaks so highly of our president and his love for the citizens of our country, irrespective of where they live. And let me tell you something. It's a blue city and a blue state, but we're black and blue because of all the violent crime we have here. Again, think about this. Nearly 600 reported crimes a day in Chicago. And the president of the United States is willing to invest political capital and his position and the political dynamic to actually help save lives, largely Black lives and Latino lives, because 95% of the murder victims in Chicago are Black and brown, 80% Black, and the other 15% are Latinos. So when he offers this kind of help, Any Democrat governor who cared about his or her constituents would say, by all means, Mr. President, I disagree with you on all kinds of things, but by all means, thank you for the help. We need the help. We want the help. We know it's going to work. We know we will save black lives and brown lives and other lives because it's working in Washington. Please send me as much as you can, as soon as you can. That's what a good governor and a good mayor does. We got rotten leaders here, a rotten governor and a rotten mayor, because they are looking the other way as people are getting murdered every single day in Chicago.
So, Governor, I said you know Chicago through and through. I've been to like the Magnificent Mile like twice. So I know enough to be dangerous. Like I know the South Side versus the Magnificent Mile, and that you guys definitely have the White Sox and the Cubs kind of thing going. That's it. So walk me through, like, is this a white and black thing? Like, in other words, where is the majority of crime? Is it in the South Side of Chicago and largely black and brown neighborhoods? If you're a white citizen of Chicago, are you not as concerned? Or is this a Chicago-wide problem?
Well, if you're worried about getting murdered, your chances are really bad if you live on the South Side of Chicago where black people live, on the West Side of Chicago where black people live, and on the Southwest side where the Latino communities are. That's where 95% of the murders are taking place. But this crime problem in Chicago isn't just about murders. It's citywide. For example, carjackings. My wife the other day was telling me how she was pumping gas, and she was very fearful because an SUV had pulled up, and she had a feeling that the people that were in that SUV, these young ruffians, might be apt to carjack her. Carjackings are citywide. And just the other night, Saturday night, on Michigan Avenue at the Rolex store, an upscale area, where Governor Pritzker, by the way, who inherited $1 billion or billions of dollars from the Hyatt Hotel family, where he lives, there was a smash and grab at the Rolex store to steal Rolex watches on Michigan Avenue, which is so vital to Chicago for tourism, the economy, and just the beauty of the city. But here's another fact about the city, which I think it's stunning when you think about Pritzker not accepting President Trump's help. In his neighborhood, the Gold Coast, notwithstanding the fact that our crime problem is citywide, but the murder problem is largely confined in the low-income, poor neighborhoods. Where Pritzker lives in the Gold Coast of Chicago, life expectancy, Sean, is 91 years, but 20 minutes south in the Englewood neighborhood, the heart of the South Side of Chicago, life expectancy there is 61 years. Pritzker has a security detail like I had when I was governor, so he and his family don't fear crime. Mayor Johnson has a security detail, so he and his family, they don't fear crime. But this is a city that's living in fear. And if you're on the South Side and the West Side, you fear actually being killed. If you live anywhere else in the city, that's not an impossibility, but you're largely fearful of being the victim of an armed robbery, a carjacking, a property crime, retail theft, things like that. And criminals aren't stupid. I spent 2,896 days, Sean, living with them for politics, not for crimes. So I know how they operate. And it's a criminal mind. It's an outlook of life. Their livelihood is the criminal enterprise. And they're always looking to see where the cops are. And when the cops aren't around, or when the cops are not politically protected, like they're not here in Illinois and in Chicago, because Pritzker and Johnson run away from the police, they know that's happening. So they become even more brazen because this is business for them. The gangbangers and the drug dealers, the ones that are working with criminals who came into our country illegally and are peddling fentanyl, these criminals know that the cops aren't around that much. They're outnumbered almost 10-1 by the gangbangers. But more importantly, they know that the Democratic politicians, the governor, Pritzker, Johnson, our mayor, don't have the backs of the police. So they run roughshod over their neighborhoods and all over the city.
All right, I hate to interrupt this amazing conversation I'm having with Governor Blagojevich, but I got to tell you, there isn't a group in Washington, D.C. Actually, it's outside of D.C., to be fair. It's actually in Alexandria, because I know exactly where these guys are. Concerned Women for America. They're led by Penny Nance. You saw her on the show last week. These guys are leading the fight in the cultural wars. Not just the ones that are hot right now, but they've been so far ahead of the curve when it comes to the culture war. They were fighting to keep men out of women's sports before it became a hot topic on the campaign trail. Literally, they're out there all around the country. They've got chapters in all different states. They got a big presence here where they're in front of the culture wars. Penny Nance leads the organization based on 7 different issues: family, sanctity of life, religious liberty, parental choice and education, fighting sexual exploitation, national sovereignty, and support for Israel. Guys, if you are a mom out there, you know more than anyone else what our kids are facing when it comes to the internet, what they're seeing at school, what they're being taught at school, what they're hearing from their friends. Concerned Women for America are making sure that our policymakers understand how we can address those challenges. So trust me, this is something that you're going to want to help support. Join me in going to concernedwomen.org/Spicer, concernedwomen.org/Spicer. You'll get a copy of Penny's brand new book called A Women's Guide, 7 Rules for Success in Business and Life, for any donation over $20. So you get the free book for $20 or more, but you're also supporting a great organization that's helping fight and lead and win the culture wars. Go to concernedwomen.org/Spicer. Thank you very much. And now back to the conversation with Governor Blagojevich. So, like I said, I by no means an expert in Chicago. I've been there a handful of times. I've enjoyed it. I go for a walk down the Magnificent Mile. So let's say I flew in tonight or tomorrow night, and I'm staying at the Trump Hotel, which I've done before, beautiful, but right downtown in that area. Would I feel safe walking that strip? Or would I have to worry about my safety?
It's a real good question. What time of day are we talking about? Is this broad daylight?
So let's say it's dinner. It's dinner, 8 o'clock at night. I finish dinner, get there for a little early special, maybe. I don't know.
8 o'clock at night, and it's turning dark here about 7:30 at night. You have to be watchful. I wouldn't say you have to be paranoid, but I'd say you'd have to be watchful. But 20 minutes south, if you're in Englewood, don't be there. You might get shot.
Okay, so you mentioned the cops. In D.C., I've talked to a lot of the police officers here. I've had an opportunity to go out and talk to some of the National Guardsmen, but this is a city that I've been around for 30 years. And when you talk to the cops, they'll tell you there's 3 things. Number one, the D.C. City Council decriminalized a lot of things, okay? So when they say crime is going down, no kidding. I mean, it's like if you go to a class and they stop taking tests, your grades aren't going to go down because, there's no more tests and quizzes. Number 2, they'll tell you that at the scene of the crime, they're being told to either look the other way or ignore things. So, instead of a stabbing, it becomes a person was injured. So it doesn't go down as a violent crime. It just says a person had to be transported. And then number 3, they literally caught a police commander here cooking the books, literally going in and taking the numbers off. In Chicago, in particular, what's the scenario there? Is it any of those 3 or all of the above?
It's all the above, and they're cooking the books. Because the numbers I gave you are probably the most conservative numbers that exist, that the actual numbers are probably even worse than that. And the directive is coming from the mayor's office and coming through the governor, and he's getting the word from the DNC in Washington, D.C. You see, they don't want Trump in here to solve the crime problem and save lives because they don't want Trump to show them up. That's another cynical and sinister motive behind Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson. I'm telling you, Sean, these people ought to be thrown out of office, and maybe, who knows? I don't want to get too critical, but they need to be thrown out of office. The first duty of government is public safety, and for them to play politics like this about public safety, particularly when it comes to how it affects Black and brown people. Black lives only matter to these Democrats for votes. It's all baloney, and they don't want to change the situation or the conditions in those neighborhoods for fear they'll lose their votes. That's what this is all about. That's what's so disgusting about it. That's what they're doing. It's all politics, and it's terribly cynical, and it's so wrong. And these white, wealthy, inherited billionaires like Pritzker, the so-called limousine liberals, these are the people who Malcolm X talked about. See, what they're doing is they're segregating crime. Pritzker, in some respects, is a modern Democratic governor, not unlike George Wallace. The old segregationist from the pre-Civil War, civil rights era South, where Governor Wallace is standing in front of the schoolhouse door, not allowing 2 young Black students to get into the University of Alabama. And President Kennedy, a great Democrat, federalized the National Guard to force the governor to back down. We get the same situation here, only the facts are a little different. It's not getting into college. It's being able to preserve your life and your neighborhood when you have that right, inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is where Pritzker is standing in the way of saving lives. And in that respect, he's a segregationist and a racist. because this would never be allowed if it was happening in the white neighborhoods. Never
Okay, so
be allowed.
right, and Pritzker is literally a billionaire, a white rich billionaire.
And
But
he
Mayor,
didn't make it himself, Sean. It was inherited money.
that's right. His father or whatever founded Hyatt Hotels. And I understand there might be a little bit of controversy surrounding how he does with his family. But let me just ask you this: Johnson, the mayor, is black. So why is he? I mean, what do other black leaders think of this? Because to your point, you know this from local politics, from your family and from your upbringing. Like the aldermen, those are the folks that are really connected to the neighborhoods. What do they think?
Well, you know what they are? They're politicians first and public servants second. They're Democrats first and Americans second. Maybe not even second, maybe worse. They're more concerned about what the Democratic Party establishment wants rather than what their constituents and their communities need. And so the black political leaders largely, the elected officials, are largely along the lines of Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker, because this is all coming from Washington and the Democratic National Convention to stand in the way of giving Trump a political win by saving lives. You got to be kidding me. When I say these things, it's mind-boggling. These people ought to be all voted out of office. You know, I tried to do something when I was the governor back in 2008. I was roundly criticized, mocked, and even the local newspapers mocked me. But Mayor Daley, who was largely a very good mayor, but he had the same problem. But see, he didn't want to get involved in the black community or do the real hard things to make those neighborhoods safe because, see, they're afraid of George Floyd circumstances, where now suddenly a cop screws up or there's a bad cop and they do something really bad. And so rather than save 10 lives, they don't want to even run the risk of something bad happening, so they stay away from it. And then they start saying we need gun control. This is their solution to this. Or you march through the neighborhoods saying we're against gun violence and gangbangers, but they won't back the police. I'm laughing because it's so upside down. They won't back the police to actually go out and get those gangbangers. And so the cynical part of it, again, it goes to all about politics over public safety and over sound policy that works. If this wasn't working in Washington, that'd be a different story, but it's working. And there's no doubt about it. Common sense tells you the more police presence, whether it's the police or National Guard or federal law enforcement, the less crime there is. It's just basic common sense.
100%. All right, I asked you about the politicians. Let's talk about the cops. Like I said, when I talk to DC cops, they'll tell you, let us do our jobs. We became cops because we wanted to arrest bad guys, right? And they're not able to do it, or they have to downgrade the crime. When you talk to Chicago beat cops, what do they say?
They say, a lot what you just said about the Washington cops. They say, well, they express their gratitude to me, frankly, and I'm grateful for that. I run through the neighborhoods, and a lot of the police will see me and they'll kind of pull up and they'll roll the window down. My pace is a lot slower now, Sean, than it used to be when I was younger.
Listen, don't even get me started. When I say I go for a run, I think like that's one that I go, that's not even a jog. It's like a fast walk.
No, I know. I mean, I'm running so slow. I'm worried Pritzker could beat me in a race. Not really. He could never do that. But I'm jogging along, and the police officers will come up, and they roll the window down, and they're so friendly and supportive. And I'm, of course, so grateful for them for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is they kept my family safe when I was hijacked from office and sent away for 8 years for politics, not for crimes. But no, when I talk to them, they say exactly what you're saying about what the Washington, D.C. cops are saying. And they love President Trump. That's one political leader they know has their backs, and they know that the Democratic politicians don't. And they didn't like Rahm Emanuel, because they feel like he sold them out. They didn't like Lori Lightfoot, though she, compared to Johnson, frankly, doesn't look so bad. And they don't like Pritzker because they can see what he's doing. So no, they're very afraid of doing their jobs, and no bail laws and running away from the police and not giving the police the resources they need to do their jobs. All of that is adding up to the kind of record crime levels that we're facing here in Chicago. In all the neighborhoods, but when it comes to actual homicides in the black and brown neighborhoods.
When you were coming up, you were a prosecutor, and you kind of had a reputation for being tough on crime, for putting people behind bars, for supporting judicial, efforts to strengthen crime. You are a tried and true Democrat. When did it change that it became cool to not be for law and order? Because I just don't. I've always said, Governor, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I said elections are won on two basic things: personal safety and economic security, right? So does somebody feel safe walking around their neighborhood? Do they feel safe economically that they can put money away, right? I've always believed those are the two fundamental issues that get people to support you or vote against you. And I'm blown away that we've now entered a period of time where the national Democratic position is we will fight efforts to keep people safe.
Sean, you say I was tough on crime. I like to think I was smart on crime because I don't think being tough on crime alone is the answer. Every case is different. Every circumstance is different. That's what I learned when I was a prosecutor. And those cases need to be judged on a case-by-case basis. Some are wicked, evil people. They need to be dealt with harshly. Some made mistakes. The considerations of mercy, all of that should be part of it. Factors like what you can do to develop neighborhoods and communities, give kids places to go to keep them off the streets. I grew up in Chicago in a rough and tumble neighborhood myself, and that schoolyard where I had refuge and I could stay off the street corner and shoot hoops and play basketball and do constructive things was, I think, very helpful to me growing up. So I believe in those things. And I also believe, as I said, though, that there are certain crimes, of course, that you got to be real strong on. And it isn't to be so much vengeful as it is that you have to protect the public. That's the first duty. And so you want to get bad people off the streets, violent people off the streets, and put them in jail, less as a punishment, more to protect law-abiding citizens from them. And we have a real problem with recidivism in the United States, repeat offenders, and there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. But the Democrat Party has gone overboard on numerous instances. For example, back in the mid-1990s with Bill Clinton, they went real extreme tough with this 1994 crime bill that Biden, and they put these mandatory sentences, one size fits all on everybody, which was really another example of democratic racism, because the ones disproportionately affected by these unfair sentences were nonviolent Black people. President Trump comes along and does the First Step Act in 2016. Some smart reforms to make the system a little bit less harsh, more just, and more smart. In other words, judging cases on a case-by-case basis. The great irony is he's been the one who's been about criminal justice reform, not the Democrats, who were the ones who created what the author Michelle Alexander called the new Jim Crow in America. With that 1994 crime bill that Biden sponsored, our Senator Durbin voted for, and Bill Clinton pushed. So the Democrats have been really wrong on crime. They had to be super tough on crime in the 1990s, irrespective of how that impacted people. And factors of justice were not a consideration. It was politics for them. Now the mood has changed. And it changed, Sean, to answer your question about 5 minutes ago when you asked the question, I think changed around the middle of Obama's first term. And the dynamic of Obama promised, I thought, a way to unite the country. We had a historic thing, electing the first Black president in America. What a great opportunity to bring our country together. But he decided to do what the Democrats have become known for now, play politics on everything, including race. And rather than be a leader to bring people together, he uses power to divide people and create great distrust in the police, among the Black community and others towards the police, which has been unhelpful because there are some bad cops, of course, but largely, overwhelmingly, the police are great public servants who work in inherently dangerous jobs. Their families are vulnerable to what might happen to them. They have to deal with criminals every single day, and that's not an easy thing. I know what that's like for 2,896 days. And then they have the politicians run from them. And the fact that they're outnumbered by gangbangers here in Chicago 10-1. God bless the police. God bless the police.
As I'm listening to you talk, Governor, are you still a Democrat?
I'm a Trumpocrat, Democrat for Trump. And there's a lot of us out there, Sean.
It's interesting, though, because I feel like you are somebody who still believes in the core tenets of the Democratic Party, but that you see this poll, and it happened in the last election, where a lot of people who say, I grew up on maybe a Kennedy Democrat, felt pulled away. I always thought the one thing that people missed during the last election was Trump saying over and over again, and you're touching on this, is that he would say these policies that I'm proposing aren't necessarily Republican or conservative policies. Right. They're common sense, like tariffs, NATO, crime. It's like, why wouldn't we do this? It shouldn't be a partisan thing. And I've always thought like crime and, military things and NATO and tariff and trade should be kind of not political things. But you're right. It's more of the common sense thing that's moving away than anything else.
when I was coming into politics and growing up and getting active in it, I saw the Democratic Party as, well, first of all, in Chicago, it's the only option, even when I was coming up. But I saw it as the party that was on the side of the little guy. Basically, that was it. Like my parents were working people, and for the most part, I think compared to them, a corporate country club Republican Party, of McCain and the Cheneys and Bush and that party, the Democrats were the only game in town. Trump has changed everything. And as Ronald Reagan did a little bit in the 1980s, he was doing it too. But Trump has dramatically changed it. And he's turned this Republican Party away from what it once was, this elite country club corporate party, into a party of working people. It really has made everyday working people the priority. And he's making Black people and Latino families the priority. The immigration issue is a tough issue on a human level, but how could that be wrong? The fact is that people who break into our country illegally, they need to be sent back home. Now, you want to be compassionate with the people that came, but even on that, Sean, I blame the Democrats. Biden and Obama, less so Obama, but way more Biden and this new Democrat Party basically put a sign up and said, come on, anybody in Latin America, it doesn't matter what the law is, break into our country. We'll take care of you here. And those poor people came on the promise of the Democrats. And now they're facing hardships, but they must, because among them were hundreds of thousands of criminals, hardcore criminals who are killers and fentanyl dealers and child traffickers, sex traffickers. That's a fact. And now the Democrat Party, too, is on the side of them. So you ask me, what am I? Well, I ain't this kind of Democratic Party, that's for sure. I'm a Trumpocrat. Working class Democratic values, supporting President Trump. We believe in God. We believe in family. We believe in hard work. We believe in opportunity to chase the American dream. And we love America. And we don't like people who burn the flag.
Do you see a day in your lifetime where a Republican could be mayor of Chicago?
I do. And the reason I say that is because, first of all, our elections, though, are nonpartisan. So you can just put your name on a ballot. You don't have to even declare your party. But let's say a known Republican got on the ballot. Do I think that could happen? I do. And it not impossible. It happened as soon as 2027, which is the next mayor's race. Consider if Brandon Johnson continues to do the terrible job he's doing right now. The last time we had pardon me?
No, he's got a 6% approval rating. I could beat him and not even live in Chicago. I mean, it's on a one-on-one race. I mean, I've never seen a politician in my lifetime with a 6% approval rating. That means even your family's not with you.
Yeah, but I'll say this: that's what it is now, and I'm not saying that he'll get reelected, but I'm almost certain he's going to run. He's going to have the same support he had in the last election among the powerful unions, the public employees unions, and the teachers union. They're the new Chicago machine now, so he will be competitive, I think. But the history tells us just this recent election that Lori Lightfoot was elected the first time with 71% of the vote, and she was such a terrible mayor. What did she get, like 17%? And the second time around, couldn't even make it into the runoff.
Yeah.
So that could happen to Brandon Johnson, but it's still far away.
Yeah.
And if he wants to politically succeed, what he ought to do is just do the best job he can for the people. And the first thing would be to keep us safe.
So with respect to keeping us safe, the president's kind of got two options. Well, three. He could do all of the above. He could get ICE and federal agents who, ICE and DEA and all that don't need, they are federal officers. They can go anywhere they want. They could really surge in Chicago and the surrounding area. He could send in the National Guard. I'm not a lawyer. You are. I will say, I think there might be a little bit of pushback on the ability to federalize the National Guard into a city short of a declared insurrection. So if you putting your lawyer hat on for a second, what's the smart move for President Trump, both policy and politics wise?
Well, I want to give a disclaimer to your viewers, Sean. I was a gentleman C scholar in law school. I got a C in constitutional law, and I did pass the bar exam the second time around. Okay.
Okay. Fair.
So having said that, we have historical precedent for the National Guard. It's President Kennedy in Alabama and George Wallace when he federalized it. So, there is historic precedent for it. With regard to, whether or not the elements of an emergency rise to the level of giving a president the opportunity to send in the National Guard over the objection of the mayor and the governor, I believe the president has that power and that authority because I think a very strong case can be made that we have domestic terrorism going on in the city, with the gangbangers working with the Tren de Aragua and some of the illegal immigrant gangs that have come to Chicago seeking sanctuary in a sanctuary city. I think, too, the fact that our mayor and our governor have declared Chicago a sanctuary city is another element that can be argued in court. However, I'll say this, I've learned the hard way that too many of our courts are political. And President Trump has learned that with the persecution he went through. And it's a question of getting into the right court. So if this is the kind of case that goes all the way to the Supreme Court, I think President Trump has a good chance of being successful. But here in the 7th District, 7th Circuit, I'm not so sure, how that court would rule on this. But it is worth testing because, again, we're not talking about, some pedestrian issue. We're talking about life and death every single day. Stopping murders every single day. That's the issue. To me, that's it. That's a compelling emergency.
But the ICE agents have the full authority of the federal government to be going in and going anywhere they want. They don't need to ask. The National Guard, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't. You obviously, I think you and I'm the equivalent of you on the economy. I got a D in economics, and then ultimately got it. I think they call the Circle D, which is like you're going to pass this course, but you really failed it, but you showed up enough. So I just think that the ICE thing to me would be the smart short-term move. But I also believe that, and you brought this up earlier, what he's done in Washington, D.C., I just think he should put a mirror in front of the people of Chicago and say, ladies and gentlemen of Chicago, I showed it could be done in Washington, D.C. If your mayor asks, I'll do this for you, but I need him to ask, and so demand it. I think that would be the smart political move.
Well, he's done that with Pritzker. He's publicly asked Pritzker to call him and invite him in. So he has done that. I don't know that he's done that with Johnson yet, but yeah, I think you're right. That would be a good thing to do. But I'll say this again, too, about the law. I also believe that when Governor Pritzker gets out there and is encouraging people to basically resist ICE, that could arguably be obstruction of justice. You're talking about a federal law enforcement agency coming in to root out crimes, whether you are indifferent to the crimes or you actually support those crimes, the crime of breaking into our country. To get in the way of that and to obstruct that is obstruction of justice, and perhaps even worse. And so the one that's really running the risk of being on the wrong side of the law is Governor Pritzker when he's doing this. And he is inciting anger in the community, in our city, and playing on the anti-Trump sentiment, which is really the makeup of today's Democratic Party. So that, to me, is a very dangerous game. It's yet another disgraceful thing that Pritzker's doing on this life and death issue when we're talking about law and order crime and ending lawlessness and stopping murders.
The president has been known from time to time to watch the show. So I hope that he takes that suggestion. I think that's fascinating. Listen, I know that your whole world in politics is centered in Chicago and Illinois, but I want to ask you to just look at what's going on in New York. It's a very interesting thing, and obviously you're just a political guy. So let me ask you, what do you think should happen? You've got Eric Adams running for re-election. I don't think there's any question. He is the Brandon Johnson of New York. He can't win. Mathematically, there doesn't seem. You got Mamdani with a plurality but not a majority, somewhere in the low 40s. And then the question is, do you pivot and support Andrew Cuomo, which I get that you might not want Mamdani if you live, but as a Republican, I have a hard time thinking that you can actively tell your voters to support Andrew Cuomo with all of his baggage. What do you have any, just from a political kind of view, thoughts on how you think that might play out or what you would do?
You mean if I was a voter in New York City, Sean?
Yeah, or there's a lot of people urging President Trump to really make this deal with Adams, give him some kind of job, give Curtis Sliwa a job, and then basically give a Democrat, Andrew Cuomo, the opportunity to overcome Mamdani.
If you love your city, as President Trump loves New York City, his city, then I think you have to try to do that. Because what you're trying to do is save your city from Lenin. You're trying to save your city from Stalin, from Trotsky. That guy's a communist. Okay? Yeah. We have that here with Brandon Johnson, but Brandon Johnson's not as dangerous because he's not so philosophically, ideologically committed like this Mamdani is in New York City. So if you love your city and you want to keep a communist from being the mayor, then I think you got to do the best you can to try to work it out so that Andrew Cuomo can get the one-on-one against Mamdani. And I think Governor Cuomo would have a very good chance of actually winning that race in a one-on-one. That's not just a Democratic primary.
Yeah. I want to end on you. President Trump commuted your sentence. You mentioned how many days you spent in jail. He commuted the sentence in his first term. He pardoned you earlier this year. You and I had a phenomenal conversation. I just urge the voters to go back and listen. Governor, the feedback I got on that show was amazing. So many people who had never really heard your story said to me, reflexively, I'm a Republican. I didn't want to hear this. And I was so moved by what Governor Blagojevich said about how President Trump treated his family. You've been mentioned as a potential ambassador. There's talk that you could have run for Dick Durbin's seat in the Senate. What are you up to these days? How's life been for you since President Trump pardoned you?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Well, it's been great since the pardon, but it was even greater with the commutation. He sent me home, right? He got me out of that hellhole. And I'm writing a book about that experience. It should come out in February, this book.
Okay.
And it starts with one President Obama, ends with another Trump. And most of it is a governor in prison with Crips and Bloods and gangster disciples and Sinaloa cartel drug dealers who look up to the drug lord El Chapo, like my daughters look up to Taylor Swift. There were murders in there. I went from the 50,000 square foot governor's mansion to a 6 foot by 8 foot prison cell. No governor has been in a prison like that. Only me, because I fought back against their corrupt allegations, because it was all weaponization. Before Trump, they did to me what they then did to Trump. And I think they learned on how to do it. And then some of the same people did it. To answer your question on a personal level, look, President Trump has been only good to me. My relationship with him is really amazing. It's miraculous. It's been a one-way street. He's always doing stuff for me. We did ask for the clemency, and he tried to, as soon as he could, to try to do it. He finally was able to do it, which is remarkable because it does nothing for him politically. It cost him probably politically. And then he gets elected, and 5 days into office, without me asking, because I felt, Sean, he did so much for me. Most importantly, he gave my little girls their father back. And when you think about it that way, when a guy does that for your kids who've grown up, my little one was 8 years old when I left. My older one was 15. And by the time I got home, they were grown up. And Trump gave them their father back. That's the greatest gift anybody's ever given me. And I felt so grateful. I deserve a pardon because of absolute innocence. I believe that, but I was never going to ask him because of how good he's been to me. And he just did it on his own, Sean, which is another example of what kind of a great effing guy Trump is on a personal level. So, look, life is great. I've been given a new beginning. My faith in God got me through all of it. My love for my family got me through all of it. It's the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, St. Paul. Live always in faith, hope, and love, but above all, love gave me purpose to be strong, had to be strong. And it's basically an FU to my persecutors by being strong and coming out, fitter and smarter and wiser. But this new beginning is miraculous. And, when you've been in a hellhole like I've been for as long as I was, and you get out of that, I don't recommend that for good people to be in something like that. But if you are stuck there and eventually you get out of there, one good thing about that is, Sean, everything is good because everything there was bad. So in many ways, every day is a gift and every day is a blessing.
Perspective matters. That's what I think you just said. And it's such a great thing because there are days when I think in a small way, today's not the greatest day, but it's better than any, so like you
Right.
It's such a smart point. Governor Blagojevich, I really appreciate you sharing your time with us and your story. It's so insightful and on both political and then personal. So thank you very much. I'd love to get you back when you're ready to talk about the book more. Sounds
great, Sean. Thanks for having me. When you come to Chicago, give me a heads up. I'll send some of my former security guys to make sure you're safe.
When I say I'll take you up on that, trust me, I'll take you up on that. Thanks for being with us, Governor. Have a good night.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, great show. Thanks for tuning in and kicking off your week with us. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, pollster Jim McLaughlin's going to be here, plus New Jersey Republican gubernatorial candidate Jack Citarelli on whether or not we can finally get New Jersey. I got a brand new newsletter coming out tomorrow at SeanSpicer.com, so make sure you sign up for that. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.